Hey guys, I'm not sure how well this is going to come out or whether you're going to be able to see it very well. I'm just going to have a crack at doing a bit of a video on filleting fish. Yesterday was a great day. We were out at the Mokes. You've probably seen the photos, so you'd be aware that we got a fairly different and mixed bag. So I am just going to give you guys a rundown on the best way to fillet a few of the different species, and then I'll show you what I do with the fish once I'm done with it. Maybe give you a few recipe ideas as well. You know, just something to a bit different for you to do with your fish. A lot of guys catch fish and then get them home and aren't too certain exactly what to do with them, so I thought I would give you guys a run through on how to fillet them the best and how to get the most out of them. So I hope you guys enjoy it and I hope it works. So we'll give it a bash and see how we come out. Cheers. Cool, so this is John Dory, one of the better eating fish in the ocean. They can be a little bit fiddly to fillet because they've got lots of spines and spiky bits on them. So I'll go through how I do it and go from there. So you cut them behind the head, nice and firm to the bone. Run your blade along the backbone, just lightly, so you just sort of cut through the skin all the way down to the tail. Then I come back and I follow the same cut all the way up until I get to the rib cage. And what I do here, which is a little bit different from how I do other fish, is I come down to the tail, through and out the other side, remove the fillet, and then I fillet the bottom part all the way up. Until I get to the stomach cavity, and then what I do is I poke my knife through, I remove that part, and then I basically cut down the fish, removing a perfect fillet of John Dory without mucking around with this part here, which has very little meat on it, so it's hardly worth the effort to go through. I'll fillet it, flip it over, repeat the process on the other side. Right, so skinning your John Dory fillets, you need a nice flexy knife, and what I do, you can see here, there's no bones in this fillet, right? Because I cut the rib bones off when I filleted it. You can actually just keep your fingers underneath at that point and tear your fillets down. It should just peel away from the skin quite easily. And if it doesn't, you've got your knife there, but the top part there, you'll get two separate fillets from your John Dory. And from the tail up, skin, nice and clean, and two separate bits. In fact, because I'm going to be crumbing it, I'll make that three separate fillets of John Dory, and do the same on the other side. So free up the top one all the way down, knife underneath. Your skinning knife doesn't have to be razor sharp, but it does need to be quite thin and flexible. Those are things it needs. Sharpness of the skinning knife can be at your disadvantage sometimes. And once again, see through. Cut that there. That's one. Cut that there. That's three. So that John Dory has yielded me three nice fillets of fish for crumbing. Very little effort involved. Next, pink mau mau. Now you can smoke these, you can just fillet them and pan fry them, which is how I'm going to do them. the way to prepare a fish for smoking is very similar to, or the same with pretty much every species. I'll show you that when I do the blue Mokes. So to fillet these, you cut in behind the pectoral fin, behind the head, running your knife behind, down the backbone, just like with the John Dory, keeping it angled in towards the bones. Lift the skin up, repeat the process cutting in slightly towards the bones, so you're removing the fillet from the bones of the fish. Now you can either cut over the rib cage or you can go through it. With smaller fish I tend to just cut through the bones, just crunch them through. Just means you're going to trim them off when you do your skinning later on. Just set my skinning knife for that. Use my filleting knife actually for filleting. Rightio guys, so what I didn't mention before is when I'm filleting fish I always have a bucket or a decent big pot of salted water. Ideally, best case scenario, you bring a bucket of salt water from out of the ocean with you home. I realise that's not always practical, but it's a good idea if you can do it. It's also really good for cooking your craisin. So what I do is I fillet my fish, debone them, skin them, drop them into the salt water, and then I'll make up another salt water mix and re-rinse them again, pat them dry, and then either crumb them or fry them or put them away in the fridge. But it just is a good way to clean all the scales off without rinsing them in fresh water, because fresh water tends to taint them. Also we have a water filter here, so I use that water to make the salt water with, so I don't get any of that chemically heavy metal sort of taste in my fish. Now, moving on to skinning pink mau mau. Pink mau mau are basically the same, what I should have said before, is basically the same as any other major fish like blue mau mau, snapper, terraki, core boarfish, any of those sort of fish to fillet. General shape, just differences in size. So, to debone them, if you fillet them and take the rib cage off, which I tend to do with the smaller fish, you cut under the rib bones and then angle your knife towards the bottom of the belly flap, and you just cut down and out to remove it. On a bigger fish you can cut right under the bones and try and leave the meat on, but with a smaller fish it's probably not really worth the effort. It'll take you a lot longer and you will be gaining a very small amount of meat out of it. Then you run your knife down. You can feel with your fingers, if you run it along the lateral line, there's some small pin bones. Again, you can use a pair of tweezers and you can sit there and pull them out manually, but what I do is I just run my knife down one side and then down the other, like so. And then when I fillet it, I can just cut that off later on. Skin it, sorry. So to skin them, same as with the John Dory, knife goes under the tail, part of the fillet, and then pushing down hard, and you basically just pull the skin and slide the knife. Get a nice clean fillet of fish with the skin removed. Remove that. This is obviously a butterfish. Many of you will have shot these, if not all of you, and you've probably filleted them before as well. I'm just going to whip through it. It's pretty much the same as any other fish. You've just got to be a little bit more careful because they are quite delicately fleshed. So I come down behind the head again on an angle. Once again, hard along the backbone, but just lightly. You're just going to basically mark your cutting line. Peel it open. If you're wondering why I'm wearing my dive glove, it's just because the fish are a little bit slippery and it just gives me a bit of grip so I won't have an accident later on. Down through the tail, back up against the spine. Now with the butterfish, they've actually got quite a lot of meat on their ribcage. So with these ones here, you can have a look in there with the camera, I cut up and over the ribcage, running my knife along it, a bit like a xylophone, dung 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 dung, all the way along the bones, freeing up the fillet. so that I can follow it down. If you're wondering why I didn't do that with some of the other fish, it's because they really don't have a lot of meat there, and it's a bit of extra effort, and if you're filleting a whole bunch of fish, it can add quite a bit of time for practically no gain. I'll just cut that there off because it's a bit of the gut cavity. Now, interestingly enough, I think one of the guys on one of the trips was telling me about it, and then I've since learnt it from YouTube as well, that butterfish is one of the healthiest fish you can eat. Not only does it have all the usual good stuff that you get from seafood, but it's also very, very high in iron because they eat kelp, and that's why their bones are green. So that's always very interesting. Apparently very, very good for pregnant women. So if your wife is expecting, go and shoot butterfish. Now because I have gone over the top of the rib cage, there's no rib bones, so all we have to do with the butterfish is just mark down along the pin bones on each fillet, like so, so that when you skin them, you've only got to cut that one piece off and you're done. Nice clean skin. Separate it out. Like that. If you've got a turtle like us, chop that up for turtle food. If not, give it to your cat or throw it away. Some people do boil them up for their fish stock when they're making a fish soup, which I will do a video on at some stage, to add a bit of meat to their soup. Just got to make sure you sieve all the bones out. Again, nice clean skin, clean off that side of the fish, leaving the sort of fatty layer. You can see there between the skin and the flesh, which is where that fish gets a lot of its nutrients from. And that is how you fillet and skin butterfish. So now I'm going to do the scorpion fish that I shot yesterday with Granddaddy Harpooker. Main reason why I'm wearing the glove is for this big fillet. Now I wouldn't recommend you go and shoot one of these every single time you go out, but they are a lovely eating fish. They look as ugly as anything, but the flesh, you'll see, is very, very white. Now what you want to do is just be very careful with these guys. They've got spines all along the head, down the back, and they are really nasty. If they get you, they are a bit poisonous. They will cause a nasty infection. You don't really want to go there. So, good sharp knife. There's quite meaty up and in behind the head here, so you cut through the skin. Their skin's quite tough, it's a bit leathery, and down, and around behind the head. Look at the colour of that meat. They are absolutely to die for, but their skin is like leather, so you've got to be pretty careful. You need to have a sharp knife. So same as the other ones. Once you've gone in behind that head, pull it down towards the tail, go across the top of it, poke it through, pull it off. Now everybody says John Dory is one of the best eating fish in the ocean. Well, I reckon these guys rival them. And the reasoning for that is probably quite simple. They basically eat the same things. They're both opportunistic camouflage hunters. And just like the John Dory, open up big bucket mouth on them, and they suck in little fish, just like the John Dory. Hence why they have a very similar flesh colour, texture, probably slightly more flavour. A lot of people call these guys the poor man's crayfish. Now you just want to be very careful here, because when you're filleting along the inside there, cutting that bone, if your hand slips and you're brushing against those spines, as I said earlier, you will end up with a nasty, nasty infection. Roll them over. And this is the dangerous side, because a lot of your cuts are made this way towards the spines instead of away from them. Goes into there. Same deal as with the other ones. Get those rib bones. Cut down. Remove them. Slightly different shape, these fish, so remove those rib bones. They don't have the lateral pin bones. I guess because they're not a really strong swimming fish, they probably don't need them so much. Easy, but get rid of those. Rightio. Skinning, pretty much the same as any other fish. These guys have got a really tough skin, so you can afford to be a little bit rougher. Slides off. Look at that. Lovely, lovely fillet. Looking forward to eating that one. Clean, beautiful, thick, delicious white fillets. So now that moves on to the last thing on the list, and that is blue moki. Beautiful big blue moki that I got out of the Mokes. Now these guys, they are nice filleted. But I like my blue moki smoked, and I like making smoked fish cakes. So normally I would have gutted this guy out at sea, but I wanted to do the instructional video and do it from start to finish. So you put your knife in the anal vent, sliding it up to in between these two fins. Now just be a bit careful here, because you don't want to cut yourself. Cut through that bone and run all the way up to the throat. Open them up. Now at this stage you can shove your hand in there and rip all the guts out, but what I like to do, because I like to keep the pectoral flaps and everything on the fish when I'm smoking them, because they've got lovely meat in there, I open up the gills in here, and I get my knife in and I cut behind the gill rakers. I free up that section of the fish, like so. Flip them over, and I do the same thing on the other side. Cut through, like so. It's easier to do when you've got a glove on as well, because you're not risking your hands, but yeah, run your fingers under there to free them up. And then all you do from there is you can either rip the gills out, or you can get your hand in here, free up the guts from the back of the fish. Run your hand forward and forward and forward. Now again, it's all about not wasting it, so I come down here. Around the head, put it on the edge of something, and if I've done it all correctly it should just snap off, so hopefully I've done it all correctly, just like that. Get your knife in there, in between the bones, push down, and if you don't cut through it like I just did, the head and guts and gills all comes out in one piece, and you've got a lovely trunked blue moki. Now your next step from here is pretty simple. You've all seen a fish split for smoking, I'm sure, but I just run like filleting but in reverse, so along the belly of the fish to the tail, and then I cut along till I hit the ribs. And what you're going to do here is basically open it up to the spine, which is there, and then you're cutting ribs off where they join the spine. Don't want to cut too deep, just crunch your way through, get to these last couple, right, and then you're just cutting it open, laying it open like so, and that is a beautiful blue moki ready for smoking. And I tend to remove this black lining here from the stomach as well. But that is pretty much it for filleting these guys. And that takes you through all the different species that we got out there at the Mokes yesterday, and the different ways that you can prepare them. So that black stuff just peels off. It's a bit fiddly, but I think it gives you a better end result with what you're doing. So I hope you guys get something out of that, and I hope that it helps you improve what you're doing. So when I'm preparing all this stuff for the pot, I'll film that as well, so you guys can see how I do crumbed fish and get it ready for the freezer, and also how I make my fish cakes and get the fish ready for smoking.